We're looking at certain types of stem cell derived signaling factors or exosomes that come from immune cells that can selectively seek and kill cancer cells. So I'm very involved in that. We're looking to do both through IV and injectable, and maybe even as a preventable thing people do, especially if they're at risk, right? That we're looking at these types of things.
Are you going through life blind? This is Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. On this podcast, we share knowledge and stories that build human connection while elevating stigmatized societal issues such as mental health, holistic wellness, culture, free speech, and more. All to ensure we show up in the world with our eyes wide open. Hello, everyone. Our guest today is Dr. Jeffrey Gross, aka the Stem Cell Whisperer. Dr. Gross is a renowned neurological surgeon and anti-aging specialist who is passionate about helping patients use stem cells to achieve their optimal health and longevity. He is also the author of several textbooks and peer-reviewed articles in his area of expertise, and he is the founder of Re-Celebrate, a modern clinic that is focused on regenerative medicine and prioritizing non-surgical approaches. Dr. Gross, thank you for coming on today, or Dr. Jeff, I can call you, whatever you prefer. How are you?
Yes, Jeff, Dr. Jeff. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to talk to you and your audience, and hopefully we can educate people about the stem cells and what's out there.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. And I know we talked a little beforehand. This has been something that's kind of been top of mind, so I'm excited as well as I think the audience will be. But before we dive into that, my new favorite question to ask people at the top is, what's top of mind for you today? Like what did you wake up and first think about?
Well, what's been on my mind today, and not just today, but recently, is that, almost every day or other day, you hear about some friend or family member or someone's friend or family member who has got a diagnosis of cancer. Like, it's more and more and more than I've ever heard in my career and in my life. And, we have some projects in the stem cell biology realm. And I got up and I wrote a bunch of emails to try to accelerate these projects because they may have significant impact on helping people address, cancer diagnoses. So that's probably, gnawing at me pretty big now.
I bet. And I've noticed that too. And even with like kids and stuff, it's more and more articles I'm seeing online about the rise of cancer in kids and young people. And it just seems like it's out there for anyone at this point.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate. What did you want to be when you were a young kid growing up, and how did that change over the years to lead you to what you're doing today?
Oh, I knew I was going to be a physician. And I had, in high school, of course, I'm an admitted nerd, but in high school I would order, surgical instrument catalogs and look at microsurgical instruments. So I knew I liked to do things with my hands and make things. And so surgery was in the making. It's also a mindset when you go to medical school, the surgeons and then the general medical doctors, the non-proceduralists, you can tell you kind of self-organize into two groups. Based on who wants to jump in and do something and who wants to think about it and propose a list of solutions. So that's kind of how we were.
That's cool.
I witnessed a kid, there's this phrase. I love this phrase. It cracked his head open. And what does that really mean? All he had really, at the end of the day, it's a scalp laceration and they bleed a lot, unless you had a skull fracture underneath. It's a scalp laceration, but it was so significant at the moment, so maybe that had a lot to do with me becoming a neurosurgeon and going into that. I don't know.
No, that's fun. I mean, I did that. My parents still talk about how I cracked my head open wrestling with my dad when I was like 2.
It's only fun till someone gets hurt.
Exactly. So as I mentioned, I have been stem cell curious, we'll just say. And, I didn't mention this earlier, but I actually first learned of stem cells from Christopher Reeves when I was a young kid because Superman was one of my favorite movies. And so when he had his horse accident, I was, as a young kid, was just horrified that he was never going to play Superman again. And I know he had started doing some of that work before his passing. So that was the first time I'd ever heard about it. And as a kid, I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to learn to walk again with this technology. And then fast forward to now, and I'm seeing people in my life start to explore and have use cases. So it's a very timely thing. But before we kind of deep dive into it,
Yeah.
can you explain in your own words, kind of layman's term, what are stem cells and how can they be used in a scientific way to help people?
Sure. Stem cells are not new. We've enjoyed them without knowing about it for millennia upon millennia. They are natural. They are part of us. Stem cells are the cells that have the power to give rise to other cells. So, in other words, our cells and our tissues in our body stem from these stem cells. So that's why they get named that way. You start out, and there are different kinds. You start out as an embryo, right? You're a fertilized egg, and then you're an embryo inside your mother's womb, and those are all stem cells, and they're omnipotent. They can form anything. They can form a person. They can form a limb. They can do a lot. Those are super powerful. As they divide and specialize a bit, they become sort of pluripotent. They can do a lot of things, but not everything. And then by the time we're a fetus and we're born, we still have stem cells that are helping us grow and develop. And those are multipotent. They can divide into many types of tissues, but they can't form a new limb. Some species can. We're not there yet. It's going to take a little bit of manipulation, but we're getting there.
What species? What's an example of a species that could?
Oh, well, a starfish can grow a new limb.
Okay.
An axolotl, which is the strange iguana from Mexico, can grow a new limb. Many lizards can regrow a tail. Even a human child before the age of 5 or 6, if you cut off the very tip of the finger, it has to be the very tip, they will regrow it. But they lose that ability towards the periphery after that age. So we retain a little bit of that. It involves some different genes that have to be reactivated and things, and then we phase those out. But in any event, back to the stem cells. So as we grow during our youth, we're tapping into many stem cells. They're in our growth plates. There are many of them in the bone marrow are stored there, reserves of them in the fat tissue and other places in our body. And then when we're an adult and we stop growing, we still tap into those stem cells to help maintain us, to help heal us if we're injured or sick, and replace tissues. We're always making new skin cells, new liver cells, things like that. So the problem is, as we age and accumulate damage from our environment, whether it's in the food, the water, the pesticides, the glycophosphates, the electromagnetic waves, the neurostress, we could go on, right? As we accumulate that damage, we become chronically inflamed. Our cells just don't function as well, including our stem cells. So we can't heal and repair and maintain our youth. So the lack of maintaining youth is the accumulation of age, which is really this inflaming, degenerative process. So in full circle now, stem cells are regenerative. And when we lose the ability to maintain a regenerative nature, we are degenerative. We have diseases, aging, and death.
Which is something we're all trying to escape. So what are some of what I find interesting about stem cells is it's really difficult to get what I would say is like pure and accurate information in a lot of ways, especially with the internet. So how can people understand the power of stem cells? Like, what can they do to help you re-age? How does it work within the body? And how do you kind of like sort through some of the information or misinformation that's out there?
Well, first, it's important to note that anything we do here, in the U.S., is based upon good science and some good medical publications or clinical publications somewhere. Most of those publications come from places where stem cells have been quite well received for a couple of decades, like Europe and Asia, and now Central America. And the Asia's way ahead of us. The publications are way ahead of us. A lot of things we do for joints and spine, for example, come out of the French literature, where they have published over 15-year follow-up longitudinal studies. So this stuff is well demonstrated or well proven. It's just that we are here in the U.S. are late to the party, and there are many factors involved in that. And And one of the reasons, and we'll be clear at the outset here, our FDA has not yet approved any of the regenerative medical treatments, stem cell being one of them. There are others for marketing claims. That doesn't mean you can't do them, but it's very difficult to advertise. It's very difficult to make any. You can't make any claims because they say you cannot make any claims. So we don't want to make any claims here. So anything I tell you would be what we're doing, how we're doing it, what it's based on, what some of the results look like. But I can never make a claim to an individual. I'd be non-compliant with the FDA.
Wow.
So that's important to state. And we let all of our patients know that up front. So a good informed decision comes from a discussion with your doctor. But back to your original question, how do you know, who do you believe? Well, make sure it's founded in good published medical literature. So whether it's in somewhere else, another country or not. And remember, 20 years ago, professional athletes started leaving this country for stem cells, right? We have Peyton Manning and you have Tiger Woods and other people that went to Europe for this. It's not new. It just seems new here.
Yeah. What are some of the reasons, and we don't have to go down this path too far, but what are some of the reasons that the FDA would be so slow to make moves to approve this, especially when we've seen them approve stuff very, very quickly when they want to. So what's the holdup, especially if we've got research backing this type of treatment?
Yeah, well, you can follow the money, and of course, everything I'll say here will be hypothetical. Like I don't have the documents to prove it, but a lot of big important companies with a lot of revenue that make pharmaceuticals, that make spine and joint implants will lose a lot of money when they start to pay attention to regenerative medicine being an option for people to either delay or help avoid those interventions. So, now, however, Big Pharma has seen the writing on the wall and they're starting to stick their toe into the regenerative medicine market. And as they do that and find a way to monetize it for themselves, it'll flip and the FDA will come around. So there are political and economic and governmental pressures that are all driven that way in my estimate.
Yeah. And so I agree with that. I talk frequently on this show with various guests about, you follow the money, you find the real reason behind why things are the way that they are. But, to swing it back, if someone's thinking about, activating their stem cells or utilizing them, what are some of the things that they should consider? Like, is it possible, for example, to have too damaged of stem cells that it wouldn't help you regenerate? And that's probably a dumb question, but I don't know that.
No, it's a great question. Listen, our cells become less functional with age and with damage. And, listen, the older you get, you can look at 80-year-olds and see very healthy, youthful, active 80-year-olds and old, decrepit 80-year-olds. And their cellular health should tell you, how they look and how they are based on their cellular health. And their stem cells are some of our cells. So if your cells are affected, your stem cells are affected. And it gets to a point where your stem cells just aren't going to do much. So that's when we tap into a more useful source of stem cells or stem cell-derived biologics and cell messengers that activate stem cells and other cells. And those usually come from donors around the time of a planned C-section. So congratulations, mom, here's your baby. Hey, by the way, this amniotic fluid and umbilical cord, you're done using it. Can we have it? And that's kind of,
that's where we get it.
In a fun way, that's kind of what's happening. But this is a very appropriate and a licensed and approved process here in the U.S.
So, well, we know why it's not moving at the same speed that it is maybe in other countries, but what are some of the benefits, or maybe use cases is a better thing? What are some of the use cases for stem cells, and how can they help you in various ailments, or just is it a preemptive solution as well? And what can people benefit from?
Well, it's a few different buckets of things. The low-hanging fruit is really musculoskeletal and structural, like joints and spine. My favorite patients are, having osteoarthritis and bone on bone and told they need a knee replacement or something like that. We want to see those people and help give them an option to slow that process, potentially reverse the process, and or avoid that surgery or put it way off. And this comes after excellent literature, particularly in Europe, on how to address these, because degenerating joints is a disease of the cells in the bone edge. It used to be the growth plate, where the cells that make cartilage live, and those cells make new cartilage during your life and maintain that cartilage, keep it moist, keep it thick. And when they become inflamed and damaged and can't do their job, you wear down the cartilage and you become what's called bone on bone, right? We tap into those cells and reinvigorate them by using stem cells or stem cell derived biologics to reverse the inflammation, re-stimulate that factory, put it in new order for cartilage, have that factory produce the cartilage, support that joint. And we have really neat benefits where we've seen MRIs, 6 months after an injection, showing regrowth of the knee cartilage, for example, and thickening of the cartilage and improvement in pain that goes with that. So that's the low-hanging fruit. Because
you have my attention with that one, because I told you beforehand, like I tore my labrum in my left hip in just a freak accident running outside, and I slipped on a leaf covering dog poop that was wet, and I just popped it. And that was a couple years ago now, and now it's pretty much bone on bone, and that's what actually led me into looking into stem cells to begin with. So I think there's probably a lot of people that could avoid an eventual hip replacement, which is the track my doctors put me on, and really sort of take this regenerative approach, which is probably long-term just better overall.
Well, listen, you don't have to have a big surgery with the risks and the downtime and the missed work and all that. If we can help someone with an injection, that seems so simple, right? And sometimes I can't believe how easy it is. Listen, I used to do brain and spine surgeries and things like that. My job is a lot easier now. Not that I was looking to make it easier, but it's easier to get the results with a lot less pain and suffering for a patient. So I like that, and I'm sure the patients do as well. So that's the low-hanging fruit, and we help a lot of people. I'm here in Las Vegas, Nevada. People fly in from wherever. Most of the work is done ahead of time. I make sure their body is ready. We make sure they're healthy, exercising, sleeping right, neuro stress is reduced, supplements are there, hormone optimization if they need it, and tried everything else, right? And then we do the right kind of MRI, not just a run-of-the-mill MRI, but a high quality with some bells and whistles. We do all kinds of targeting because we need to match up the actual problem with something we can help with. And we're not doing the work. I'm just helping your body do the work, right? Your cells have had this blueprint all along. We're just tapping back into it, So that's the low-hanging fruit. There are some people that have diffuse many joints, osteoarthritis, aches and pains everywhere. That might be treated with an IV. We want the biologics to go throughout the body and have some benefit everywhere, as opposed to a specific joint injection or something like that. And we've treated lots of different joints. And then we treat people with inflammatory burden, people with autoimmune problems, irritable bowel diseases, thyroiditis, anything that has itis in the name, chronic lung problems. And sometimes those respond wonderfully to IV. And if there's a lung component, we even do a breathing treatment of the materials. And then, there are patients with certain infections that leave a lasting inflammatory footprint, like long COVID or Lyme's disease. Those patients tend to have benefit in the overall inflammatory problems that they're having, because most of the symptoms stem from the persistent chronic inflammation, and toxic exposures can do that. Chronic neurostress, psychological stress, all kinds of things can do that. And we target that because the regenerative medicine is really, when you look at it at the cellular level, it's stopping inflammation, reversing it. And when the cells aren't busy dealing with inflammation, then they can function in their optimal mode as they were designed. And that's really what we get out of the regenerative medicine, is that youthful, restorative, reparative mode. And we do, and some of those people do this, as you said, can it be a preventative? Yes, we have people that do the IVs for biohacking and anti-aging and prevention. I'm one of them. I've been doing them now for a number of years, every few months. So that's something. We also use it for recovery, whether it's athletic performance enhancement or recovery from a marathon or what have you. We use it for we see people with that track their health metrics with an increased heart rate variability, or HRV, for those of you that wear the Whoop device or an Oura ring, or now the Apple Watch does have that, and Garmin devices tend to have it. That's one thing. But recovery from heart attack, stroke, things like that tend to benefit from these things, especially if there's an inflammatory component. It can help your body fight the inflammation related to chronic diseases, and most chronic diseases are diseases of inflammation.
That's what I was going to ask next.
Cardiovascular, diseases, Alzheimer's, and some of the regenerative biologics will cross the blood-brain barrier. These are called stem cell-derived exosomes. Stem cells are too big, and oddly, stem cells actually only last in your body about 10 to 14 days. But they produce these exosomes, which signal and convert your cells into behaving better, and that's really where the work is done. And that's why we can skip ahead and just go right to the concentrated exosomes, especially if there's a brain involvement. And then we have some other fun things. We have some cosmetic procedures for the face and thinning hair. We have some sexual function shots for men and women. Oh. And we have other individual uses depending on what we're trying.
I actually have just been seeing Instagram ads to me about hair, stem cell hair.
Yeah.
Don't do the transplant, do stem cell hair. Like, that's the whole message that I've been seeing now. I'm in some algorithm for that.
They come up for me too. Maybe it's males in the age range of 22 to 90.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. So what's it like for you from like a day in the life of someone coming to get an IV or get an injection? And I know they're probably a little bit different, but what's that like if you come in? What's the patient experience, even maybe from the consultation all the way through? Is there, the downtime and when people start to feel the benefits?
Yeah. So the IVs, that's simple. We do that here in the office. It takes, 45 minutes or so. And some people feel a wow factor that day because it can start right away.
Yeah.
I have some young people that, didn't feel that kind of wow factor in energy, improvement in sleep and cognition and what have you. But, I had one guy send me a snapshot of his HRV that jumped 50% the following day for a number of weeks. So we know it's working at the cellular level. We see improvement in cellular health markers and biological age tests. I have one attorney that comes, before he does a big trial, because he says his brain just works faster and better after an IV. And then a lot of us just do it, once you get your inflammation suppressed, you just do it as a routine just to keep it there. I have a sweet woman who's just probably turned 81. She comes every 2 years for an IV. She's got osteoarthritis in various places in her body, but her hands are really affected. She can't do her little craft steal she likes to do until we give her the IV. Then she's good for about 2 years at a time.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good for her. And the downtime is not really there.
No.
It's the amount of time. Okay.
No, that's the IV. And then you asked about the injection. So, people that we do invite here to town for an injection, because most of our work is remote and most of the hard work is done ahead of time. We know what to do and where to do it once we get to that point. But when you come into town, you can even, if you're up to it, you can go out that evening. You'll be sore from the injection, but there's no downtime. We want you using your joint because it stimulates what are called mechanoreceptors, the little mechanical nerve ending in the joints that stimulate the release of certain peptides that call for the healing phase. So we want that sort of call and answer going on at the molecular level.
Yeah, which is great. And there's people, so like we talked about stem cells, it's kind of new here in the States. It's gaining traction. We've got lots of research from around the world for many, many years that have been success. I told you I have a friend that left the country and got it. And that's when he first told me to think about it. So we are very Western traditional medicine in this country.
Yeah.
And so that is surgeries, that's hip replacements, that's knee replacements, that's medication, all of that stuff. What are some of the challenges of someone who's been dealing with chronic pain or an illness or arthritis in their hands? What are some of the challenges or changes if they wanted to change to a more holistic or regenerative approach as opposed to traditional Western medicine?
Yeah, keep asking till you find a doctor who's open-minded enough to discuss it. And the funny thing was, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, I would have been the guy saying, "Yeah, I just don't know enough. I'm not quite ready to discuss that as an option." I wasn't against it or not open-minded to it. It wasn't part of my training. It wasn't part of my re-education every year until I sought it out. Until patients said, "Come on, doc, I'm not ready for surgery. What else you got? How about stem cells?" I finally went back and just pushed myself and went to different courses and went to different training every year and got retrained and got excited about it. And now it's almost all I do. So you got to find it. You got to be inclined to look for it. You got to search it. It's here in the U.S. It's very hard to advertise, but it's here. We've been doing it for a while now, a number of years. So it's and by the way, the very low level of this is called PRP, or platelet-rich plasma, and that's almost ubiquitous. You can get that almost anywhere now.
Yeah.
And even though it's not approved by the FDA for claims, we do see that insurance companies, the bean counters, figured it out, and a lot of health insurances are starting to cover for PRP.
I was actually going to ask, not specifically about PRP, but I didn't know that. But I was going to ask, what's the insurance's role in all of this? Because they tend to also be a little bit more on the traditional side of things. And obviously, I'm going to say too, not very well. Like, I had to pay for my hip like $800 with some of the best insurance I can get. I still had to pay like $800 for that MRI. Yeah. So it's not even covering traditional that well. But are there limitations or opportunities? Maybe PRP is one of them, but with this type of regenerative care that you can get coverage from your insurance company?
It's coming. There are a couple of ways around that. It's not quite here yet. And listen, let's face it, your insurance company doesn't care one iota about you being healthy. They just don't. They want to take in more money than they pay out, and they pay bonuses to their CEO in the $100 million range. So, and these companies make billions of dollars a year. Their vested interest is in profits to their shareholders. So let's not even pretend that they care. Secondly, if you have an HSA plan or FSA plan, you can use those funds. That means you have control of some of the healthcare dollars. Alternatively, if you have an employer-based plan where your employer actually insures the people, even though they hire a third party to ruin it, if you complain enough to HR and say, I need this covered, with the right squeaky wheel, you can get it covered. But you're going to have to work around the institutionalized, run-of-the-mill cookbook BS medical care that insurance companies are forcing down the throats of many doctors who have given up. They let the tail wag the dog, and they just apply treatment based on they know what can be covered, and that's distasteful.
Yeah, I feel, as I said earlier, I went through a journey for probably 10 years now where I've just kind of looked into trying to live a more holistic life, be more proactive instead of reactive, kind of unlearn some of the things that, society teaches you and forces you to do. In that time, I've found things, like chiropractic care, all sorts of stuff that I had no idea or believed was like quacks, right? Yeah. And one of the things that I find, and you're right about this, one thing that I find frustrating about doctors, and not obviously all of them, but some of them, is that, and I even say I don't even have a primary care physician anymore because I haven't found someone that I trust that isn't going to fit me into whatever box to get insurance to approve it or get, whatever for, medical kickbacks, medicine kickbacks, whatever that is. So I know I'm probably in the minority on that, but I think a lot of people do wonder when they go for care, what is it that, like, how can you tell if a doctor's really trying to help you heal or get better, or if they're trying to make sure, your insurance is going to cover it so that they get paid, which is also fair. But is there advice that you would give people to like kind of uncover that and make sure that they're actually getting better health outcomes?
I don't know. The insurance thing is almost a conflict of interest, right? So
Yeah.
I think that you just need to ask the doctor about all options. Do your homework first, and if they don't give you all options, go, hey, what about these three you haven't mentioned? You haven't mentioned chiropractic. You haven't mentioned acupuncture. You haven't mentioned different type of supplements. You haven't mentioned stem cells, and see what their answer. If their answer is, you're right, I haven't, and I just don't know enough. Let's go talk to some people. Why don't you go see those people and let's see what they say? Or if they shut you down. If they shut you down, you shouldn't be there, right? That's wrong. That's not a doctor-patient relationship. And honestly, a lot of this comes from the inbred training. I was trained by professors 20 years ago who were trained by professors 20 years earlier. And when I every now and then I talk to one of those grandfather professors, I notice we're not doing anything differently, at least in the spine surgery realm, than they were doing. Yeah, we might have a new tool, a new gizmo, but it's the same thing. We're really doing nothing's changing fast enough. Yet I'd say drugs change faster than surgery. And people say, oh, robotic surgery, all this stuff. Robotic surgery is still surgery. It's doing the same thing. It might be doing it a little more precision or something like that. But, I don't think we're moving fast enough. So if you really want to find a good primary care doctor, I would interview a functional medical doctor or a naturopath and a medical doctor of some kind, whether it's an MD or DO, and see who's open-minded to more natural and newer alternatives, not just good old medicine and surgery.
Yeah, and that's a lot of work, and I think about that. That's a great advice. I haven't really thought of it that way before. I'm just kind of giving up on it. Like I'll go to immediate care if I need something or whatever. So I think that's actually good advice. You treat it like you would treat a job almost, or a
Totally.
candidate search.
It's a very intimate relationship with a physician who you're going to trust. So yes, interview, do the work, make the right relationship. And that's my best advice.
I appreciate that. As this, I don't know, do you call this medical technology or whatever you want to call it?
Let's
say, advancements. What do you see coming next? Do you see further advancements in the treatment forms? Do you see it becoming more common? Like, what's the future hold for stem cell in terms of research and application to patients?
Yeah, so the areas of research are in, not in this country, are looking at, working the cell backwards, stem cells backwards into that from multipotent to pluripotent phase where it could regenerate a limb or do a lot more, or grow an organ or something. So that's very exciting. It's just a little out of control right now. We don't know how to control that. So that's being looked at.
How is it out of control?
We don't know how to turn it off. We could turn it on. We don't know how to turn it off. So you don't want to grow like a liver, we're going to grow you a new liver. And then all of a sudden it won't stop growing. And then all of a sudden you're a human liver or something. So that might be a little over cartoonized, but it requires to turn on and turn off because you don't want it to grow something you don't want, like a tumor or something. Mm-hmm. So, but I think more close to the vest is we're involved in these projects to look at what I told you at the outset of this interview. We're looking at certain types of stem cell derived signaling factors or exosomes that come from. We're looking at certain types of stem cell derived signaling factors or exosomes that come from immune cells that can selectively seek and kill cancer cells. So I'm very involved in that. We're looking to do both through IV and injectable, and maybe even as a preventable thing people do, especially if they're at risk, right? That we're looking at these types of things. There are other cancer treatments being studied in this country that pharmaceutical companies are very involved in called CAR T cells, where you sort of use regenerative medicine to have your body sort of create a vaccine of sorts against the cancer cell that might be able to be identified and removed. In addition, we're looking to these stem cell derived exosomes that are specific ones that are chock full of mitochondria. And you talk about longevity and health span and being healthy in your later years, and muscle mass and bone density that are important for that. And if we can find a way to support that with more mitochondria in your, being donated back, it might be a really cool longevity hack. So those are the kind of projects we're working on here and that are coming. I think you'll see they're already playing with this in other countries. We're going to be last to the party.
That's, it's really a bummer when you think about all the progress on something like this and how many lives could be saved if we just put the pedal to the metal and caught up with the rest of the world. I just get so bothered by that stuff because and again, it's about the money, right? It's like, we've got to make sure we can make money on this before we decide that we're going to let people get this treatment, even though it's been proven to be helpful in so many different ways.
Yeah, it's money, it's power, which power leads to more money. So it's, the puppet masters. I mean, this is big in many different things, not just medicine or stem cell medicine, but our lives are very highly controlled and dictated for us under the idea of freedom. But is it really?
Oh, well, we could do a whole other episode probably talking about that. I always say, like, we have the freedom to play within the sandbox that they've given us to play in, but we don't know that the sandbox is in the middle of the desert. And there's just so much more we could do.
Fair enough.
There's so much more. So I have to ask this, of course. When it comes to like a diagnosis, I don't know, maybe this would change based on diagnosis, but what side effects do people have to consider? Are there specific types of injuries that this wouldn't work for? Are there things that could go wrong with an injection? Could someone have an allergic reaction? Those types of things that people should consider.
Yeah, let's address this. So there's a hypothetical idea that you could reject someone else's stem cells. I've never seen that. I've never been able to find it in the literature, but we do tell people it's a possibility. When you have a complete bone marrow transplant for leukemia, you're getting someone's stem cells, and it has to be a match. But if you're just getting a treatment with something stem cell based, you don't. So the stem cells are what's called immunoprivileged. The immune system doesn't. They're neutral. Come on in. You're fine here. Yeah, VIP. Come on in. So we haven't seen any problems. Now we use a lot of these stem cell derived exosomes, which have even less chance of rejection. Never seen that either, because they're not even really cells. So they have very few, if any, cell surface markers, which is like the serial numbers, So they go without problem anywhere. In terms of side effects, though, when we do the IVs, if you do have inflammation, your body has to get rid of all those cytokines, and I'll come back to that word, cytokines that's stored up that are pro-inflammatory. So to purge those out through the system, some people might have a day or two of a flu-like symptoms or flu-like syndrome without the flu. So low-grade fever, aches and pains, malaise, tiredness. Because remember the phrase cytokine storm from COVID, when people were in the ICU with all kinds of heart and lung inflammation so bad they couldn't breathe, needed to be intubated with a breathing machine and all that. Yep. Well, those cytokines are the molecules that call for the inflammatory immune system to come. So when you have an inflammatory problem, inflammatory burden, an autoimmune disease, arthritis in your body, something, your cells have stored up and utilize and release that information, calling for the immune system, which causes your joints to degenerate and you to feel sluggish and all that. And that you have to get that out of your system. So if you do have a treatment with stem cells or exosomes, your cells have to flip their factories from defense mode to, peacetime production mode. And doing that, they have to release all that old inventory of warheads. So we do see that as a side effect, sometimes actually the minority of people.
How do those release? Is it like sweating? I mean, I don't know.
No. They release from the cell into your bloodstream, and they circulate around. Then you feel yucky, and then they get purged out, filtered out by the kidney and urine, probably.
Okay, so it's like alcohol the next day when you're hungover and you can kind of feel it. Yeah, okay. Correct. But that's not something that goes on for
No, a
weeks?
couple of
No,
days at
okay.
the most we've seen.
Okay. It's like a detox. No,
It is
no big deal
exactly that.
there.
It is a inflammatory detox. That's exactly what it is.
I've recently been kind of paying attention to, and again, it's all algorithms, how we see everything nowadays, right? But I've been paying attention to like the role that inflammation plays in pretty much every type of illness it seems like that we have. Is that something you're comfortable kind of overviewing, like the role of inflammation and why we have
Yeah,
so much of it?
absolutely. I mean that is the heart of aging. Is in fact someone once called aging inflammaging because really that's what it
Mm,
is. And the faster and the more inflammatory damage our cells accumulate, the faster we look like we're aged and the faster we are biologically aged. And there are tests for that you can do that look at different markers of inflammation. And you can tell what your biological age is, not your calendar age, right? Because you may be 35, but if you're super healthy and you exercise, you eat clean, all that, your biological age might be 30, right? And that doesn't
right.
sound exciting, but if you continue that pace, by the time you're 80, maybe your biological age is 60. So it could be really good, stay
I
with that.
really want to do one of those tests, but I'm too scared. I'm going to find out something I don't want to
Well, it
know.
may wake you up. It may
Yeah.
help you make some changes. It may not be. And listen, I have some people who try everything super healthy and they get the tests and they're shocked by the results that aren't that good. And we make a couple tweaks. I have some that we had to tweak the omega 3s. They weren't taking enough good omega 3. They needed more and a few other little tweaks and we got there. So it just depends on things. So it's worth doing. There are different ways to do it. There are bloodstream markers and there are cell markers and they all tend to trend the same. So one isn't necessarily better than the other. But the one I've been using is this glycan age test, which is a lot like doing your HbA1c, which is a 3 to 6 month look back on your blood sugar management,
Mm.
right? And you can know if you're pre-diabetic by that number or how well you've been. And this one will give you a look back like that. It's modifiable. So if you make some lifestyle changes, you can actually change that number.
Wow. I've also recently been learning a lot about blood sugar and insulin and the role that plays in people's health. I do feel one of the things that's good about the internet, which is also the bad thing, is like information's at your fingertips. It's not always the right information, but there's information at your fingertips. Um, do you have any um, thing that you would say to someone, or you maybe say to a patient, if they have concerns, or they're like, yeah, but it's not FDA approved, or yeah,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
voodoo science, or whatever types of things you hear as a doctor?
No, I'm not here to twist anyone's arm. The people that seek me out already have an inkling that they're interested to talk about regenerative medicine, stem cells, and exosomes. We're upfront about that the FDA has not approved this for marketing claims. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean you can't do it. Uh, the government is, despite their efforts, is not supposed to be involved in the doctor-patient relationship. So as long as you get in fully informed consent, you know what you're getting into, and you know what the alternatives are. So if you're looking to avoid a knee surgery, why not try a stem cell injection? What could you
What
be
do you have to
worried about?
lose?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of how I think about it too, especially when you're going to go under the knife and anesthesia, and that has all of its own
yeah,
types of issues that could come up, and you really don't know. And then why not try an injection? Why not try an IV? Why not try a quick
right.
outpatient procedure that you might be sick for a few days, but you don't have months of rehab coming after it?
Yeah, and again, that sick is mild and in the minority of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are I know you shared the story. I love the story about the 80-year-old lady and her hands and being able to do her crafts and stuff. Do you have any other stories of just truly transformational experience that you've had with patients that you can share?
Well, I mean the joint regeneration stuff when you do an MRI 6 or 12 months later. I think you asked me earlier. I don't think I answered. How long does it take?
Mm,
Knees 3 to 6 months. Ball and socket joints like shoulders and hips a little longer. Spine's a little longer. This is measured in months. Um, Sometimes we get an initial anti-inflammatory benefit from the biologics, but really the regenerative takes time to rebuild that
yeah.
joint, and the joint will remodel. It's amazing, but we've seen this is a favorite of mine. A friend of mine wanted to try this. So we brought him in. He had grade 4 chondromalacia, which is bone on bone. There's a wear and tear of the joint scale from 1 to 4. 0 is no degeneration. 1 is mild. All the way to 4 is pretty much bone on bone. But you're really not microscopically bone on bone. There's a surface there. They just call it bone on bone, right? They do an X-ray. Oh, it's bone on bone. You need a replacement. So we did an MRI. We did an MRI, and it was one of the sides of his knee. I said, let's try this. Don't have the surgery. And, he could exercise somewhat. He was limited. He had a lot of pain and stuff. He called me at 3 months. He goes, we did both knees, by the way. One knee was great. The other knee, the bad knee, the grade 4 knees, it's just not where I wanted it. I'm kind of concerned. I said, okay, well, it's only 3 months. You're not super patient, but let's do an MRI just to calm your nerves, because we can get MRIs for just a few $100s. It's not that big a deal. You paid more through your insurance than I can get them for cash.
I know.
We got him an MRI, and I shared it with him. I said, look, you've got about a 25 to 30% increase in the height of your meniscus and your articular cartilage in that knee. It's improving. And we talked, it was probably a month later, like month 4 after his procedure. He goes, I am getting better. I just wasn't patient. I said, I know. And he said, I can walk up the hill a little bit further now with less pain and stuff like that. He's about 6 months out now, and he's really turned the corner. So the more degeneration you have, the longer it will take.
Right. But that doesn't mean it's not working. And I think, too, we're just in this world now. And I think that, like, regenerative medicine, preventative medicine, I think these things are really important for people to pay attention to. And I know everybody's stressed, everyone's busy, all that stuff. But these things, you do it now or you pay for it later with bad health and money or whatever that might be.
You got to make the choices to make those simple changes. For example, you got to start with, good diet. You got to start with supplements. I make little baggies every weekend for my week. I'm all set.
Oh, nice.
I'm all set with my supplements. You got to, maybe do some hormesis. Hormesis is a slight stress on the body to build resilience. That could be in the form of high intensity exercise, hot sauna, cold plunge, intermittent feeding, or full-on fasting at times. Mm-hmm. Those are amazing to help clear out the old crappy cells, including the old crappy senescent stem cells, the zombie cells.
Oh yeah. I actually have been intermittent fasting since I was a kid and I didn't know it, but I would do, I always felt sluggish if I ate breakfast in school. So I stopped eating breakfast and I started feeling better. And then I went through I've been through every health kick every fad that's come around, I've probably tried out. And then I tried the whole 5-6 meals a day thing. And I just felt always hungry and always sluggish. So now I eat in between 4 p.m. and about 10 p.m. and that's it. And otherwise I'll have black coffee, tea, unsweetened, or water.
Yeah,
that's
perfect.
It.
Yeah.
And it's made such a difference.
These are called acaloric beverages. You have no calories until lunch, and hopefully your first meal is protein heavy. Yeah. And that's the way to do it. We shouldn't be, if you were having as a kid carb heavy breakfast, which is, the American way, right? Pancakes or cereal or oatmeal, then that'll slow you down for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And Kellogg's CEO a few months back said that we should do cereal for dinner now. So that's double the sugar for the kiddos.
Great.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me that this is how we do things. But on that note, I've also started doing cold showers started over a year ago now. And at the end of my shower, unless it's at night, I don't do this at night. I only do it if it's before. I'll turn to cold for 45 seconds, sometimes up to 2 minutes, however long I can take it. And I noticed that too. You just feel alive coming out of that shower.
Yep.
Yeah.
So cold plunges, hot sauna. The data on these things are amazing. So, you look at hot sauna. When you get in hot sauna, your body releases what are called heat shock proteins. And these are very primitive proteins that help clear out senescent cells. And, there's sort of a cytokine, but a good cytokine, an anti-inflammatory cytokine. Well, stem cells and stem cell derived exosomes also have a lot of these heat shock proteins. So That's an example of what you can do for your body. For example, fasting is a wonderful cancer preventative hormetic activity.
Do we know
72-hour
why?
fast. Maybe
Oh, wow.
you can do it once a quarter. Amazing.
72 hours. I wonder if I could do that.
You can have
Wonder.
water, black coffee, black unsweetened tea, just no calories.
I feel, man, by the time I'm eating at night, I'm like, where's the food? I actually start
Uh,
with a protein shake, but
the 24 hour, the first 24 hours are hard. That's when the stomach is grumbling and you have a headache. Once you get past that, man, the brain is amazing. It's on fire on that second and third day. So give it a
that's
try.
awesome. I'm going to try it. I will actually try that. Um, Before we turn it out, and I'll turn it over to you to ask me anything, but what's the last piece or any additional advice you have to someone who wants to learn more? Obviously, they can come to your website, Recelebrate.
Oh, yeah.
What should people be thinking about as they explore stem cell as a regenerative opportunity?
Well, know what your goals are. So what's your problem you want to address? Do your Google homework. Is there something that's already been mentioned, to address that problem? And then search PubMed, and you can just type in, problem stem cells PubMed, and
Mm,
and see what literature's out there, where the literature's written. Is it U.S.? Is it not? Not that U.S. is any better. I wouldn't say that it is. It's just, the FDA doesn't like to look at literature outside the U.S. So,
right, right.
but see where it's been done, what's been done, what the results were they done in humans, things like that. That's the kind of thing we look at because we have people. I had a lady came to me. She had radiation. I think it was for her thyroid years ago,
Mm,
and as a result, the way they targeted it went through her salivary glands, and now she can't make spit. She can't make saliva, and it's hard for her to. She's dry. She has a dry mouth syndrome,
yeah.
and so I looked at it. I said, I don't know if I can use what we do for that, but I looked it up, and lo and behold, there's research on reanimating gland function by injecting stem cells. So I'm like, we could give it a try. Everyone, this is, people will warn you, oh, it's experimental. Everything's experimental.
Everything's
Trying a
experimental.
blood pressure medication on you is experimental. Everything's experimental. Nothing is guaranteed. The FDA says we cannot make any claims about stem cells. Well, we can't make any guarantees about anything we do,
Yeah.
right? So it's almost ironic. But anyway, we really want to base it on something good, something that's been done before with good results, without harming anyone, right? We want to do no harm.
Right. Well, I think the nice part about what you've shared so far too is like worst case scenario, someone's a little off for a few days while they, detox or I forget the technical term. So it's almost like a saline solution, right? Like it's gonna do very little risk for people
Right,
to try something
right,
that's quote experimental.
right. We've had no adverse effects, side effects, allergic reactions, or anything. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We just got to get the FDA on board, I guess.
Well, we don't have to have the FDA on board. That's
That's the beauty of it.
maybe if you want your insurance company to eventually cover it, maybe. But
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Well,
we don't.
that's what I think. Oh, go ahead.
No. I was just going to reiterate. Go ahead.
I think what concerned me when I first started looking into it is finding out how much it costs because it is very expensive and or can be, I should say. I don't, I obviously don't know for sure everything everywhere, but I think it can be expensive, and that's what is a bit of a hesitation for people because it's not covered by their insurance.
Oh, sure. I listen. We've tried to get the prices down here, and we use a lot of, we didn't really get into the weeds about stem cells versus stem cell derived exosomes, signaling factors. I'm a big fan of the signaling factors. They have many advantages over stem cells while doing the same work as stem cells in most applications. They're less than half the price of stem cells. So, we can
Oh,
we do IVs of different doses here in the office, anywhere from, just under 4,000 on up.
yeah.
Joints, we try to keep, joint procedures. We do those at a little surgical facility with little sedation because of the injection and all,
Mm,
with the x-ray guidance. But, 2 doses above and below the knee meniscus on the outside, for example, we try to keep that, you know,
Right.
down in like the 11,
Reasonable.
12,000, depending on what we're doing that day. And in I know you can pay a lot more here in the U.S. and leaving the country. Your friend in Panama, I have colleagues who run a clinic there, and I think it's 28,500 to just show up. So
Yeah. That's maybe the same place. Actually, I think that's the number he threw at me.
yeah, it's a great clinic. They do great work, but it's there are less expensive ways to approach it here. I'm not saying we're any better. It's different.
Right.
I know you go to Panama, they include a few nights at the nice hotel with the buffet. I don't have that here in the office.
In and out. But hey, there's plenty of buffets in Vegas that people can.
There are indeed. Some of them are pretty good.
I know. It's like one of my favorite things about Vegas. I don't enjoy Vegas, but I've also mostly been there for work, which is a whole different thing. But the buffets, some of them could gain 10 pounds easily.
You could.
So before we wrap up, I want to flip it over to you to ask me anything that maybe you want to know about me or my experience in life.
Yeah, you teased us about your stem cells, maybe looking at it for your hip or something. Did you do anything? Did you try anything?
No, I didn't. So I went and resaw my hip doctor March maybe, and we did another MRI, the $800 one I told you about earlier, and he kind of looked at it and he's like, well, it's been 2 years. It's gotten worse. We talked about surgery before, but it was like a 6 months to clean it up and like clean up the labrum. And I was just like, I'm not doing that. Sorry. And so now it's to the point where he's the bone on bones thrown out there. And so this was around the time I did a cortisone shot, which I know are not always the best thing to do, but it did help me for a little while. So now that was when I had first brought it up to my friend who mentioned it. And then I started kind of looking at it, and it's something that I'm thinking about doing. I don't know enough. And this conversation has been very helpful for that. And then, of course, it's just, the cost of doing it and how much all of that, is it financially viable? So it all kind of plays in. But I would imagine a scenario where I try stem cell before I do any kind of surgery.
Yeah, let me challenge you here. Live on not live. It'll be live when you listen to it.
Live when you listen to it.
Right here. You send over your MRI, and we will review it in a follow up, a part 2 of this, which you could append for anyone who's interested. We will show the pictures if you're willing, and dive deep and see where the targets are and see what's going on in there and see what you're a candidate for. I'll do that. We'll do it right here on this channel when you're ready.
All right. I will take you up on that. I have the disc in the other room, so I can send that over. Actually, I got to find a disc drive, but then I'll do that.
Yeah. If you find a disc drive, you can send that through a file sharing service of your choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then we can get on and we can do a share screen function here. Hopefully your Riverside has that. We could,
it does.
Then it'll encourage people to watch, not just listen to your
Let's do that. That's a great idea. I think we should plan to do that. Let's show everyone how messed up my hip is from slipping on dog poop and wet leaves. So, well, I want to thank you again. This has been really helpful for me. I've had a really, really, really good time chatting with you. Where can people find you and get connected with you?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. By the way, this is great talk. I hope we talk again. But our company is called Recelebrate because you're celebrating the renewal of your cells. So you'll find us on all the socials, our website, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. Is RECELLEBRATE. So recelebrate.com or at Recelebrate. You'll find us somewhere.
Awesome. Easiest place to find is in the show notes. We'll all have all those links. But
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. This has been great.
Same. Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. Dr. Gross and I actually continued to talk, and from there decided that I was actually going to go through the process of getting a stem cell procedure and treatment on my hip injury, which we talked about in the episode. So for next week's episode, I've compiled the last few months of my treatment process, and we'll put that into the podcast feed, including where I'm at as of today in terms of my healing journey. So I actually traveled out to Las Vegas in order to get a stem cell procedure with Dr. Gross, and we've been monitoring my healing process over the last few months. So on next week's episode, I encourage you to check it out. If you want to see the MRI results and the walkthrough that Dr. Gross does with me, please check us out on YouTube. The link is below. That's at Eyes Wide Open Content. And then I hope you enjoy going through this journey with me of getting stem cell injections to heal my injured hip. Tune in next week to find out the results and see where I'm at today. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Eyes Wide Open. If you enjoy the show, the best way to support us is by sharing or dropping a review. For more information and content, check out engagewithnick.com or find me on Instagram at nthompson513. Don't go through life blind. Do the work so you can show up in the world with your eyes wide open.